Hi, my name is Phil Langdon and welcome to my channel. I want to talk about knowing yourself in this video. A lot of people don't seem to grasp the fullness of what that means, and I feel as though I know, so I'd like to express it. Knowing yourself means know your true self, and your true self is what we refer to as God. It's all very serious. It's not. God is spirit, pure spirit, and this is your true nature. I'm going to be talking in metaphysical terms. I found illumination 6 years ago after meeting God, and it's because of meeting God that I found illumination, and it's the reason I talk about these things. Spirit or God is the opposite of what's physical. So we have spirit and energy, which in Hinduism is Shiva and Shakti, literally consciousness and energy. And if you're worried about semantics, the word consciousness or awareness or mind or spirit can be used, but people use those words for different things. For instance, some people might use them to refer to the psyche, which is physical, or the intellect. And it's a very different issue to awareness or spirit. You may think, if you're scientifically inclined, that there is no distinction between spirit and energy, and that spirit is an imaginated or imagination, or the product of our imagination, and it doesn't exist. But I've actually experienced being completely away from the body in illumination. You basically die without physically dying, but you leave your body as if you've died. Semantics can get in the way of understanding these things, but I'm going to use the word spirit for fundamental awareness, which I associate with eternity itself. I would say, from my experience, that we are eternity itself, and that is awareness. So we have two opposite things at the same time. We have eternity, which is spirit, and transient energy. Eternity is infinite, and therefore an infinite expanse is a singular expanse. Infinity is singular in its nature. So we can associate infinity with oneness and eternity. If you think of God being all there is, if that's all there is, then the only thing you can make is using your own self. So you divide into your own oneness, but you retain your oneness, because a division are making a manifestation which is the opposite nature to what you are as spirit, ineffable spirit. So there's a complete opposition to spirit and energy. It also means they have a relationship if they're exact opposites. It also means they have a relationship if they're exact opposites, and all relationship leads to a refinement and a perfect union of the two opposites, and in this case that leads to the production of the Son of God, who turns out to be eternal. So there's a technical issue there we'll have to get into in a minute. The basic premise of this video is to express the fact that knowing yourself means to know God, and yet God has three aspects, or spirit has three aspects, and they are the God ineffable aspect, the manifest singular identity or persona aspect, that's you or me, with a personal identity that's separate from others, and then there's the abyss, and the abyss is the opposite of a singularity. Of course, you have a point of view in question here. As a human being, you're not really a human. The human body is a little mini cosmos you're using to fathom your own nature. You are an indestructible singularity according to the Vedas, which I would agree with, and as a singularity your opposite is the abyss, which is an infinite expanse. With singularity and infinite expanse, they're one and the same thing viewed from two opposite points of view. So it's about points of view when you have manifestation. God is singular nature by itself. There's no point of view, as it were. God has every point of view, so to speak. So these three aspects are the aspects of spirits. That's one, zero, which is singularity, and infinity, or the infinite expanse known as the abyss. we can think of the 1-0 infinity nature as a simple concept of dividing 1 by n, which n can stand for any number. The idea is that if you take n, the value of n to 0, the value of 1 over n goes to infinity, and vice versa. So 0, 1, infinity have a relationship around unity. It's like 0 to infinity is like the range that unity has, which is an infinite range, as it were. And of course, range suggests manifestation. Right. So this tells us that we have to come into a manifestation in order to find the abyss. But you can't find the abyss without finding God. So when you come into manifest life, you're supposed to find God, and by finding God, you find the abyss as a result. And as a result of that, you define the Son of God in so doing, and you complete the nature of your own being, which is spirit. See, so metaphysically, you are supposed to be experiencing all 3 of those aspects, and you experience all 3 aspects during your life. Meeting God gives us the understanding that allows us to ascend to find the abyss, and it's singular understanding. Yeah, God is never-ending, so we cannot know the all of never-ending God, but you can meet God who has a persona. It's to link with you, because God is so different to your physical, personal identity nature. There has to be a sort of go-between, so when God comes to meet you, he comes to meet you as a persona that merges with you and becomes one with you, and then you can become God, as it were. And that persona is referred to as Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. This is because we relate back to God while we are individuals and of that mindset. God has no identity, so it's very, very different to personal identity. It's the opposite. We have ego. God has no ego. So you're merging with no ego. This means that because it's completely different to physical creation, it also means that God is blameless and has nothing to do with creation. Acts of God are not acts of God; they're just acts that happen in creation. It's an automatic, energetic system. We have to take that. Unfortunately, that's the nature of it. So God is blameless. Lots of people blame God for all sorts of things, but God is blameless, and we need to oversee. It's easier to look at death in the terms that it actually is when you're illuminated, or you've known spirit yourself, or you become spirit yourself. You realize that it's actually, there's no such thing as death, and we simply transit, from one body to the abyss to another body, effectively. And as a result of God being blameless, when we come into an incarnation, our life, the results in our life are basically down to us and how we perform. Yes, of course, you're born into ignorance, so your performance is poor at the start of life, and it gets better and better as you go along. Hopefully you learn, from how things actually work in the world and how people really are with their problems as well. You have to curtail other people's problems while you're dealing with your own. Life is due to ourselves with what we've got. When we know God, our point of view expands beyond the personal identity, and we become our highest self. So life can be said to be about becoming your highest self, or becoming God, or even it can be said to be about falling in love, because meeting God is all about falling in love. There's nothing really else to it apart from that, to be perfectly honest. So you wonder how on earth you can suddenly know all these things just after a meeting with God, but of course God is a truth beyond all things, so it's going to change you and develop you, obviously. And illumination is the point where you enter God's classroom, so you start learning deep things that go much further than normal, because your appreciation of your existence has changed, and therefore the things that can be put before you in life are going to be of a higher nature, or more subtle nature, or more challenging nature, like the elemental tests, the earth, fire, water, air tests, about testing your tenacity, your genuine honesty, whether you can handle abuse, how you handle abuse. Do you use your ego to handle it, or are you beyond the ego? You know, all this sort of thing. It's a lot easier to go beyond your ego when you meet God, I must say, because you have the perfect example. Like, he's the perfect role model, if you like, your true self, obviously. So that's what I've aspired to ever since. And it's been interesting. Let me just explain that it's been 6 years since I illuminated, and as a result, the first 4 years were about finding insights, or gaining the insights from the illumination itself, that led to the point where I understood there's a cosmic being, which is the light, the creator light, and the cosmos. That's the cosmic being, basically. The light is associated with being his head, and the cosmos is like his heartbeat, you know, the cosmic cycle. Which can be very confusing. It's not that the cosmos expands out and contracts into nothing and just does that like a breathing lung. It doesn't work like that. It has a braking system that we call black holes, and it pursues the concept of position, velocity, acceleration, and applying its own brakes to its runaway train system, because the cosmos is accelerating in its expansion. It's expanding faster and faster. So that's a runaway system, so it needs brakes, and its brakes are internal, and they are black holes that eventually hoover everything up, so there's only black holes left, and then they dissipate through Hawking radiation. So we go back to a T=0 state, and then it starts up again. That's the idea anyway. So there's lots of sinkholes in the universe that the universe sort of like falls down as if it's a liquid that's expanding, but then it gets sucked down all these holes and back into its original state. That's how it's seen by illumination, the cosmos. So I just wanted to end with a couple of comments that I've had recently from people that don't get it. You know, it's very difficult to get the depth of metaphysics if you haven't met God. You can do it intellectually, but it'll take you a while, and you'll miss things, and your particular conclusive points of view might be slightly off here and there. So someone said recently, anyone illuminated wouldn't waste time on tubes, meaning YouTube, much less tell anyone he's illuminated. I'm not so sure about that. Furthermore, all is not one. You would lose your personality that way. Well, there's a person who has made an assumption, or two assumptions, and they're using semantics in confusion there, obviously. So anyone illuminated wouldn't waste time on tubes. Well, they're admitting they are not illuminated by saying that. Much less tell anyone he's illuminated. Well, why? Are they worried about the idea that somebody's boasting or has a massive ego about it? Because I don't have an ego about it. And the only reason I'm online is to communicate with other angels, earth angels that are here, that you wouldn't know about if you're not an earth angel. So to say that somebody who's illuminated wouldn't waste time on YouTube is an assumption. They can't back up. Telling anyone they're illuminated, well, I felt the need to do that in this world, more so than the idea that I should shy away. I don't shy away from things anyway. That's not ego. That's just recognizing the state of the world and knowing that this information should be known. Then he says, all is not one. Well, all is one spiritually, not physically. And then he makes a physical statement, you would lose your personality that way. Well, surely that's a reference to your individual ego, that you'd lose your ego. Well, you do lose your ego, effectively, but it's still you, because God is your true self. So there's a shifting of perspective. A normal person would think that God is something else, and that you're becoming something alien, or it doesn't really mean anything to you if it's not you. But really, God is your true self. So there's no weirdness to it. It's perfectly normal to become egoless. There's lots of things to say there, because when you come back to the body after illumination, you're back into a personal identity again, and it's still you, so to speak, but your awareness has expanded beyond what can be considered normal. And as a result, you don't see things in those terms anymore. You do have a personal point of view, because you're the one who's experienced it, and others haven't, and therefore you take on this not argumentative, but a talking point of view that knows about it, talking to someone who doesn't know about it. And naturally, they're going to be a little apprehensive that you're so confident that you know what you're talking about when they don't really understand everything you're saying necessarily. There's all kinds of problems when dealing with this subject, that when people don't really know it, they assume things. They mess up some of these very short statements that assume prior knowledge. And it's assumed with the statement "know thyself," for instance, it's assumed you know that actually refers to knowing God, because it could say "know your true self," see, and that would be a little closer to the truth, really, in its own statement. So it's very easy to get lost in these short statements about, that are supposed to be ultra wise, in the sense that we can say all is one, but that's a spiritual statement, and of course the physical world comes from spirit, therefore spirit takes the lead, and therefore you can only talk about spirit and that there is only God, and therefore all is one in this sense. Doesn't mean there's no cosmos. It's just semantics, really, a lot of the time. I responded by saying I totally disagree, being on this side of it. Also, I think you're using semantics when you express concern for identity loss. There is none. It would take so long to explain, it's best left up to the individual to experience. Finally, I wouldn't be so sure of your opinions when you have no idea what illumination does to you in the first place, let alone knowing what an illuminate would do. Assumption is the mother of all mistakes. Thanks for your comment. Another one I got was, Freemasons teach that Jesus is Lucifer, but that is untrue. Read Job. In the Bible, read the book. The book of Job is about a guy who becomes illuminated and he's hassled with diseases and all sorts of physical problems, as if becoming illuminated just sorts everything out, no matter what, and that your life is going to be perfect afterwards, where the suggestion is that could be the case. Job just gets hounded by diseases and all sorts, and God keeps asking, "Well, go and find out if he still loves me." In other words, it's like the elemental tests. If you get tested by life and it's really harsh, how sweet are you after it? In other words, does it make you narcissistic, and does it make you angry with yourself? In other words, is it challenging to your ego? In other words, do you still have an ego? That's what that boils down to. The book of Job. Does he still have an ego? See? Right. So Freemasons teach that Jesus is Lucifer. Well, there's a problem with the distinction between Jesus the Nazarene, the person 2,000 years ago, potentially, who became an illuminate or a master of the craft, because that's what the master of the craft is, an initiate, which is highly possible, but we can't prove it either way, and it doesn't really matter because lots of people become illuminated. So the only issue there is, was he really special? Well, no, because the Son of God is the special one, and the Son of God is not a person, it's a thing. See, if God has no identity, the Son of God is a thing, not a persona. It can't have a persona if God has no identity, because it's the Son of God. So it's an object, a thing, a creative principle, not a person that stands waving his arms about. So yeah, a master of the craft is someone who pursues self-work, which is like the idea of Freemasonry, and they do that to some extent, but I don't know how far they go. So Jesus, in a way, is Lucifer, because Lucifer means the bearing of light, the bringer of light, and that's just a way of talking about the light, which is the creative principle anyway. There's nothing evil about that. The thing is, it's called Satan as well, because Satan, being the opposer of God, is the opposite. So it's a physical creator, it's a physical thing. That's right, God is spirit, which is the opposite of physical, so it's simply referred to as the opposite of God. The creative principle is opposite to God, Satan, and everything it makes is satanic. Well, everything it makes is physical, so the satanic appellation is simply a reference to only physical, ignoring the spiritual. See? That's all. So I hope that's clear. Any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. You can email me. There's a link down below to my recent book called Blueprint of the Gods, where I talk about all this. The first chapter is Metaphysics 101. It goes through it properly for you, so you can see what it's about. And thank you for watching.